I'm Robin Openshaw, the Green Smoothie Girl online for 18 years now. Eventually, science and medicine are going to have to concede that vitamin D does not whatsoever live up to the claims made about it. Hundreds of randomized controlled trials show this, but your practitioner may not have bothered to learn about them, partly because on the surface, it may seem that a higher vitamin D level helps you, but actually, higher D levels correlate to better health, while taking the pill, known as vitamin D, does not strengthen your bones, which is what we were originally told it would do, nor does it improve your immune function, which is what they're telling us now. Vitamin D isn't a vitamin at all. You can't even make a case that it's a vitamin. The only reason I can figure out why this steroidal hormone is labeled as a vitamin on the bottle is that people understand the word vitamin, so it's a good idea for marketing purposes, but it's not true. The medical definition of vitamin is a substance that cannot be made by the body and has to come from food. The substance you call vitamin D is not found in food. It's made by the body, and you really cannot get it from what is wrung out from sheep's wool, which is what over 99% of vitamin D supplements are made from. Making this byproduct of the sheep industry when it's dried and processed using chemicals and solvents worth more than gold by weight. Of course, the pill that you take is mostly excipients and fillers and a bunch of other stuff and just a little tiny pinch of this stuff that's worth more than gold. But is it worth anything in what it actually does for your health? Or is it just lining the pockets of tens of thousands of people and companies all over the Western world, many of them in healthcare? Another part of the scam is that we are measuring 2 molecules in the lab test when dozens of molecules are involved in the steroidal hormone made by the body. Also, the lab test that you get is measuring blood levels when steroid hormone D is stored in fat in your body. We're not measuring the right thing or from the right place. Hundreds of studies show that D levels drop when a person is sick and their levels recover when the person gets well. Also, a large study showed that having D measured in the blood, considered to be low, has no impact on health outcomes. When you really study this subject, it becomes clear that low D levels are a marker of poor health and not a cause of it. Part of the scam is that they've repeatedly pushed the range that you're supposed to be in of the biomarker measured by blood labs to higher and higher levels, so that more people believe that they are deficient and are then the customer for the pills. The one and only time I took these pills was when my hormone practitioner told me long ago that my D level was optimal, as it always had been, but she told me to take it anyway, just to be sure. And against my better judgment, I bought the pills she private labeled, and I took them until my labs the following year. At that time, my vitamin D level was below optimal for the first and only time in my history of getting labs drawn annually. Now, this all by itself doesn't prove anything to you, as it's an N=1 study. It's just a case study. But this is when I started researching this issue more deeply. Now, what most practitioners would do in that case is just tell me to increase my dose. It's a pretty strange cycle, really. I take D when I already have optimal levels. My D goes down to below some arbitrary threshold, so I'm told to take more D. I didn't, though, and never took it again. And the following year and every year since, I have a high D level as a blood biomarker. And really, I don't even want to test for that anymore, the whole narrative having fallen apart for me a long time ago, and I have to pay for that lab test after all. But I do it just for the sake of my ongoing research here. There are no health consequences, according to 60 studies, attributed to having what is deemed as low vitamin D levels. And yet, 95% of the holistic-oriented people I know are committed to the idea that the lab tests they get are showing they're deficient in something, and they believe they need to get it from a pill. Everybody's doing it, so it must be a good idea, right? It's not necessarily the best logic. People sometimes get angry with me for sharing information like this if they take vitamin D. It appears that we very much want to believe that whatever medical products we've used are good for us. A few times I've had a colleague or a friend show me a study to argue their point that we need vitamin D pills to argue that it prevents something, a study that I then read, and every time I've pointed out to them that the study doesn't actually support the idea that they brought it to me for. And every time I ask them, did you read that study? And every time they've either said no, or they've said that they read the one paragraph abstract, or they just don't answer my question. Anyone who spends 2 hours reading the meta studies on D with even rudimentary knowledge of research methods and decent critical thinking skills will seriously question the widespread advice to take the pills made from sheep's wool or some vegan alternative wherein chemistry is involved, or it wouldn't be a white powder in a capsule. So far, I haven't been able to get the vegan vitamin D manufacturers to tell me how they make their product. More and more studies show that taking the pills doesn't correct a deficiency and doesn't improve immune function. Just like these same pills clearly don't strengthen bone, which is how they used to pitch this steroidal hormone to us, and they started selling it to dairy companies who then advertised milk as fortified with vitamin D, since that makes the consumer think it's better. A meta-analysis of 3,940 studies shows no positive effect on bone fracture rate of those taking vitamin D supplements. Remember, for decades, that's what they sold it to us for. The narrative finally came completely off the rails, so they just started telling us other benefits of it. A study called Vital, B-I-T-A-L, followed 25,000 people for 5 years, comparing half of them taking D and the other half taking a placebo. They found no difference in cancer or heart disease between the two groups. That matters a lot when so many are claiming that taking the sheep's wool pills prevents those diseases. So I mentioned that lower vitamin D levels in 60 studies show no difference in outcomes between people who take vitamin D and people who don't. What fools a lot of healthcare practitioners is that basically the two molecules they're measuring have associations with selected outcomes. But taking the sheep's wool pills do not affect or cause the health outcomes for huge populations of people in these studies. When the Vital researchers failed to find any positive benefit in the study with 25,000 people for 5 years, they did a secondary study with 5,000 people and went to the media and the healthcare industry saying that they found one good thing: 0.4% less metastatic cancer, which is barely statistically significant, but that's what made it into the media, is that vitamin D prevents metastatic cancer. And thousands of practitioners repeat it as preventative for cancer because they've not dug into the history of this study and the follow-up study. It makes sense that the media just repeats what they're told, but doctors mostly don't dig into the research either and just go along with the consensus. The vast majority of functional medicine practitioners are affiliates for some D brand, or they private label a D brand, so it represents significant income for most of them. My perception from trying to talk to many healthcare practitioners and influencers about this for years is that the more their income is linked to a product, the less interested they are in research that doesn't support the need for that product. Hope this is useful to you in saving your money on products that you don't need. This is my 5th video on this topic, bite-sized videos covering various parts of the fiction that everybody's low in D, you get it from a pill, and it prevents poor health. And I don't have any alternative supplement to sell you because your body makes the steroid they call D, and it's highly unlikely that you're deficient. I hope you save some money from learning about this, and I'll see you next time.